Good evening. How is everyone doing? Okay, before I leave the office for the day and retire for the night, of course, we're going to continue the subject, You Can't Write Your Own Story. And we was in the first message, we was talking about many of us who try to give um, our own take of who God is and what God is and how we're going to answer God. And most of the things we do, we based on our own presumption of who God is, and that comes from we're not giving our all into Him. We're not giving our all. And what's happening, a lot of us often give things to God. God proves Himself, but when it comes back around, God still has to prove Himself. I think many times I mentioned to many of you, why does God got to keep having to prove Himself to you? You got to understand, if God wants you to have it, He can twist this word any way He wants to make sure you get it. And a lot of us are trying to hold on and make something fit that we know God ain't in it. We sit around here and we're made decision that has drastically changed our lives and people around us lives. And now we got to victimize other people as a way to make ourselves feel good. So one of the prophetic words, and I'm not going to say them all for this year. One of the prophetic words for this month, the people that victimize you will become victim of their own words. That means the one who done slandered, who done lied, because many of you, you stayed faithful through the hardship, through the trials, through the tribulation. But yet, even in some of you, God still has continued to prove something to you. We're going to be in Mark chapter 8. It's in verse 1, it says, In those days, the multitude being very great and having nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciple unto him, and he said unto them, I have compassion on the multitude, because they have now been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away fasting to their own houses, they will faint by the way, for divers of them came from far. So here we see that Jesus he was in a place that people had been around here for 3 days, and what we got to understand in this chapter 8 that Jesus is trying to test the faith and humility of his disciples. And so when we look at this miracle that Jesus is going to perform, and we're looking at this situation, it comes a time in your life with God that God has to step back and he want to see what you going to do. So when it talks about in those days, we remember in Mark 7, that's the one, that's the chapter where uh, he called the woman a dog, and he healed lepers, and he healed the dumb and the deaf and the dumb. And we get over to verse 8, and what we see is Jesus having compassion on the people that have followed him. And he talks about that they came from different areas and different ways. So watch this. Why is it that as leaders, we always have to tell you what God wants you to do to prove your faith? Why is it that you're not at a level that you can prove your faith your humility, your power. Why is it you can't do it yourself? So here we see the disciples, they've been with Jesus too, but we're looking at the disciples and no one in them to say, hey, Jesus, these people might be hungry. These people might need something to eat. These people might need some to rest. But it touched the leader to turn around and look at them and said, they have continued with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away hungry to their own houses, they will faint on the way. For some of them have come from afar. Then the disciples answered him, how can one satisfy these people with bread here in the wilderness? So watch this. How can you say you love God? How can you say you're growing in God? And y'all sit up under leaders that oftentimes show you the power, the authority, the wisdom, the understanding, and the connection with God, but yet and still, you still clueless to who you are in God. How is it that the leader knows, for some of us, I ain't not all of us, knows what's going on in your life, but you don't know what's going on in your life? How is it that people that are not even around you know more about what's God doing in your life than you do? It's wrong. Then here we go with the disciples asking the question, how can one satisfy these people with bread here in the wilderness? See, Jesus already showed the disciples who he was by feeding the 5,000. He already showed them. And here again, Jesus was trying to give them the chance to redeem themselves. Because all they had to say was, hey, Jesus, you did it again. Here we got this. Here we got that. Go ahead and do what you do. Why is it God got to keep proving himself to people who say they got a relationship with him? And if we want to make it personal, why do I have to keep reminding some of you about the same thing? How can I keep reminding you this what you need to do? This what you have to do. When is it gonna sink in that you that you can't reproduce what's already in you? What's wrong? It's because you fail to understand that you're more powerful than who you are. That's why I said a couple of weeks ago, I said, I'm not teaching the word again in ways that I got to keep reminding people who constantly hear me to keep doing the same thing. It's get tedious, it get old. It's not hard, but just like Jesus, See, the reason people don't understand prophetic people, Jesus stopped every now and then. And what people fail to see when they read the Bible, he was testing his disciple at every level that he went up to. So when Jesus went to another level, he often tests their disciple at the level he left. So here, he had already showed them that they could multiply with 5 fish and 2 loaves of bread. And here, they get the same opportunity to do it. They seen Christ do it, but here they say, how can we satisfy these people? Ain't no bread here in the wilderness. Ain't no bread. Well, God, how can I have a husband? How can I have a wife? You got to be one first. You got to be one. So the disciples asked a question. How can a man satisfy these men with bread here in the wilderness? And it says in verse 5, and he asked them, how many loaves have ye? And they said 7. Selfishness is why God got to keep proving himself to many of you. See, what we see here is that they didn't even offer the loaves. Jesus had to ask them. Because remember, Jesus said in the last miracle, he said, take up them fragments. Now we don't know if this the same fragment from then and then, but evidently they had something. Why had Jesus got to keep asking for what you have? And the reason you don't understand it is he trying to show you how selfish you really are. See, if they were really in tune with Christ and understand who Christ was, they should have offered or they should have suggested, hey, when you did the miracle last time, we got 7 loaves right here. See, we move it over into that part that God shouldn't ask you what to give, where to go, what to do. You should already know. But because of the spirit of familiarity, because of being ashamed, because you don't want people to know your true relationship with God, you got to wait for God to send somebody or to say something that he got to question what you have. How many loaves have you? We'll go out and if we see a nice shirt or we see some clothes or we see a car, food, but we get what we want and we say, look at him and we enjoy it and we don't say nothing. But the minute God want to get in our pockets, in our decision, in our mind, now we got to stop and wait for confirmation. Now we got to ask questions. When are you going to come to a decision with God that when his final word is his authority when he's speaking to you? All right. Verse 6 says, and he commanded the people to sit down on the ground, and he took the 7 loaves and gave thanks and brake and gave to his disciples to set before them, and they did sit them before the people. All right, so now, after God had to say how much you got, so what's that saying? A lot of you are hiding things that God knows you got, but you scared to offer. We're going to talk about that first. But here, he commands the people to sit down, right? Then he takes the 7 loaves uh, from the disciples. He take the 7 loaves, he give thanks, break, and then he give to the disciples. See what we fail, even in giving. We too upset, we too grounded in giving that we don't often give thanks to God for us to be able to give. That's why a lot of us don't miss the multiplication of oftentimes what we give and what we do because we don't give thanks in what we're doing. But we give gripes, we give upset, we give, dog God, I got to do this, dog God, I ain't got anything left. See, if you gave thanks, because what I be trying to teach you, especially with money, if God telling you to give somebody some money, especially for the kingdom, he ain't asking everybody. So to many of you, you don't see what kind of relationship or how important you are for God to ask you and you do it. That's number one. Because you don't see him asking John Wick to give, you know. He ain't asking your daddies to give. He ain't asking your mama. He coming straight to you because what's happened, if you don't realize you are God's source on the earth, that's why you ain't getting nothing from heaven. You got to want to be a source so he can make you a source. So the minute you complain, the minute you say, oh, God didn't tell me that, the minute you say, oh, I can't do that, God can't multiply what you got when you think what you got is all you have. And that's what's wrong. But watch this. If we go back up, they seen the miracle before. God done did things in our life before, but once again, he got to keep asking us what we got, like we ain't never seen him bless us before. It's because your faith. You ain't got faith. He's trying to grow your faith. And with every blessing God does, it should increase your faith in him. But for many of you, it's the opposite. For every blessing you do, your faith decrease. You know why? I hope God don't ask me again. Why God keep doing this? Why God keep doing that? You do know God used people on earth to do his bidding from heaven. So if you don't want to play your part, guess what? Stop asking God to do stuff for you. You don't even know yourself. So now he gave to the disciples to set before them. And they did set them before the people. You know what? What we miss oftentimes in scripture, it never says how much. It'll tell you who need to be fed and what they do it with. But you don't know if they had 2 plates, 3 plates, 4 plates, 5 plates. All you know is that it was enough and it was a leftover. But watch verse 7, it takes a turn that we often miss. And they had a few small fishes, and he blessed and commanded to set them also before them. Now watch this. Last time, when it was a small lad, they say he got bread and fish. You know what the disciple was doing? They was testing God. Let me see if he bless this bread, then we'll add the meat to it. That's what they did because the meat came after the bread. So a lot of times we want to see God move for us before we move for him. And what happens in our own fine little small mind, we do it. But why we got to continue to do it? See, the problem with many of us, that you ain't gonna get this rest you looking for, is because God got to he he got to keep proving to you that you already been promoted. That's like going to the fifth grade and you still like to cover by numbers in the first grade. The more demand God puts on you, that's telling him that should show you rather that's the more what he put in you. But because you can only see yourself naturally and not spiritually, you refuse to grow. So now when God comes back around and asks you to do certain things, you complain, you get disgruntled, you get depressed, you get upset, and you get hard of heart. Because let's face it, a lot of times we'll do what God tells us to do, but in the back of my mind, what about me? See, you got to lose that what about me syndrome. Because if God is going to make you a conduit of his blessing, miracles, or whatever he want to do on earth, he- you got to be sold out. You can't be sold out only when you see what God doing. And see, that's what's wrong with a lot of y'all. You wait till God actually do what he say he gonna do. You believe him and thank him, but then when he come back around, he got to prove himself to you all over again. Y'all better watch holding back from God, and the next time you hold, you lose everything you got. He said he building an ark. God don't want no stingy people in the ark. It was never ate for 40 days. But imagine, some of y'all went to that Noah's Ark. Look at all that food and all the supplies that they had in that Noah's Ark up there in, what is that, Williamson, Kentucky. Did y'all notice all that stuff they had for just 40 days? Did you notice how neat and stacked that Noah and his family put that in? I wonder if it went past 40 days, would God had automatically multiplied the supplies that they already had? That's something to think about. Because they had all them animals in there they had to feed, including themselves. See, when you don't know that sometimes you anointed to help the world, that's why you keep getting selfish because you think what you're doing ain't enough. And so verse 8, so they did eat and were filled, and they took up of the broken meat that was left 7 baskets. And they had eaten were about 4,000, and he sent them away. So they came in with a few small fishes, and they took up of the broken meat 7 baskets. No matter what you do, or what you give, or what God asks you to sacrifice, the reason you don't get the overflow, you don't get the more than enough, is because you never blessed it before you did. Because see, in my mind, if you bless God for speaking to you and allowing you to give and obey him, then you do it and you come back. and you bless and thanking God that your gift or whatever it was received, oftentimes you ain't got time to get mad. You ain't got time to get, dog, I gotta pay my mortgage, dog, I gotta pay my car note. You know why? Because your mind is on the kingdom. And if you read the Bible, the kingdom take care of its own. You got to be cautious about doing kingdom things without a kingdom mind. That's why you still struggling. That's why you don't know who you are. Because you're doing things out of obedience, but you don't understand it's a bless to it's blessed to obey. So then he says, straightway he entered into a ship with his disciples and came into the parts of Dalamanutha. And the Pharisees came forth and began to question him, seeking of him a sign from heaven, tempting him. And he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, why does this generation seek after a sign? Verily I say unto you, there shall be no sign be given unto this generation. Now watch this. The same people that just witnessed this miracle, which were the disciples, he now gets in a ship with the same people that don't believe in him. See, you got to watch carrying around people that don't believe the God in you, but but watch this, they're attracted to the miracles of what God does in you. That's why a lot of people you don't see around me anymore. We never said nothing. But like I said, you know who growing because I'm constantly looking. And the description I often give y'all, I say it's like having a fire on the beach. You got some that get right to the fire, and you just want somebody just want to be warm. So the ones that want to be warm, they're not interested in getting in getting hot. They just want to be around to feel the flame. That's why they ain't around no more. Because God will let you hang around long enough to give you a chance to change. And guess what happened? Cut them loose. They ain't growing. Because the worst thing, and see that's why some of y'all ain't growing now. As a leader, the worst thing that you can have in your spirit is dead weight that don't want to grow. That's why I pay attention. Because even when I was doing ministry in the house when I was married, I was in conference room, I was going around, and if you stayed with me any length of time, I politely told them, you don't belong here. Because a leader should know the inventory of what he has in the sheep. And I was the type, if you around me and God ain't gave me a word or told me about you or what you need to do, you don't belong to me. But I said you can stay alone as long as you want, but don't ask me no questions. Don't tell me to help you, because if God don't speak through me for you, ain't nothing I can do anyway. And a lot of y'all in ministries that the leader don't know nothing about you, but you raise them as a leader. As far as me and God concerned, if a leader can't tell a follower who they are, they ain't no leader from God. Y'all being bamboozled. You know why? Because they ain't teaching you to go to God for yourself. So now you believing in people who don't even believe in God. Anybody can go to church. Anybody can go to school and get a license to preach. But if what you teaching don't come from God, you ain't called by God. And what's wrong with most of us is that we have got familiar with a tradition and a cycle of who God is. And this the season you got to know who he. I told y'all 4 years ago, I said we're gonna come to the time. The only reason you gonna know a person is from God. What did I say? You gonna see their power. We got a lot of church, but we ain't got no power. Ain't no power. And the only gift they use is prophecy, and that's tainted. So that ain't no good. I was looking, what's his name? I was okay, I can't call his name. But I look at certain well-known prophets, and every prophet different. All of them different. But the number one thing a lot of y'all got to understand, a prophet's job is never to embarrass you when you in sin. It's to turn you away from it. So when they get in front of these churches and they calling you all these kind of names, please understand that's not the spirit of God. But if a prophet prophesies something to you and is dealing with miracles, you got to be strong enough to understand if you know you in sin, God ain't finna give you what they tell you. Because even before I came to who I am, and one day I went somewhere, they're gonna grab my wallet. Oh, you don't tithe. And I'm looking, and what tithing got to do with God? Money don't move God. And just like y'all be hearing me talking about that old woman down in Birmingham, you got leaders taking in tithe, living off your tithe because they don't make enough money on their job. So now you tithing and they spending your money on their fake purses and they fake hairstyles and they what they have 15-piece lemon pepper hot honey wet with extra ranch fries, and you sitting at home, you stirring up a cup of noodles. Listen here, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you. But I guarantee you, and I stake my life on it. What is? Oh, this August the first already. My fault. People who listen to this and you tithing, you gonna see your money dry up. You know why? Because for the past 3 or 4 years, God been telling the prophets to tell the people to prepare. Ain't none of y'all preparing, but you still tithing. And you tithing to people who just saying they blessed, and it's only because of what you give them. So here they looking for a sign. So what we see is that Jesus is walking with disciples that see him do miracles and don't believe in him. Now he got people who believe in him, but only if they show him he real. You ain't got to prove. Listen, you ain't got to prove that no matter who you are in God. Just know you in God. You ain't got to prove nobody what you do with your money, who you go listen to. That's between you and God. But make sure it's you and God. So people gonna tempt you not to do. They're gonna get you to tempt them to see who you are. But the sad about it, as we talked earlier, they'll know who you are in God, and they'll see the sign, and they still won't believe in you. So here Jesus was in the ship, went over to the Dalamuna, encountering unbelief again. So now he got unbelief with the people he's teaching and unbelieving with the people he watches. So in verse 13, he said, and he left them and entering into the ship again, departed to the other side. Now the disciples had forgotten to take the bread, neither had they in the ship with them more than one loaf. And he charged them, saying, take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the leaven of Herod. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, it is because we have no bread. So watch this. They took up the meat and left the bread. But they had bread with no meat. Do we think that's a mistake or did they do it on purpose? Because I'm sure that the bread was multiplied just like the meat. But watch this. They had a little meat and much bread. All right. So here you go over to the other side. They forgot the bread. They had a lot of meat. That's what's wrong with us. We allow our blessings to choose what's more important to us instead of evaluating and seeing they're basically the same thing. Same thing. So when he talks about the leaving of the Pharisees and the leaving of what's the name, Herod, what he's talking about, it wasn't merely bread. Now see what happened when he said leaving because of who they are, they meant not meant. They thought he was talking about bread because that's often the word they use with leaving. But what he was saying is their conversation. The conversation. See, Herod, which was the king, he thought he had the ability to do everything. And when we talk about the Pharisees, they being spiritual, they think they had the power of God to do everything. So God is trying to tell us, you got to make a decision where you want to be. Do you want to be constantly a follower of church or constantly a follower of the world? You got to make a choice because it's too many two-sided leaders and two-sided peoples saying they sold out for God. And they reason among themselves, saying, is it because we have no bread? See, y'all, I think I was kind of touching on that earlier. How can you be around people and you say you spiritually connected, but you don't know when they spirit crying for help? You don't know when they trying to speak something in your spirit. What I said earlier, I was saying, was it earlier yesterday? I said that's why when you understand when you're around prophetic people and they're genuine, you got to watch how they talk to you. Because a lot of time they trying to reach your spirit, they ain't trying to reach you. That's what we were discussing over there when with the woman that want the crumbs. You seen how Jesus insulted her? And guess what happened? Her spirit never changed because she wanted him. You know, yeah, master. Even dogs eat the crumbs. She was willing to compare herself to a dog just to get the healing he deserved. You know what y'all be doing? You blessed and highly favored. So you walk up to the church on Sunday with that fake Birkin bag, that fake hair, them fake clothes. Uh, I can't pay my rent this morning. I need help. If I was one of your leaders, well, won't you go sell that Birkin bag? You can't because it's fake. So what God is trying to tell us, we put value on the wrong thing. You looking like $1 million and they ain't got five. I was looking at a woman. I was in the court getting some paper, and she in there wanting paperwork from the judge from the court to show her that she ain't got no income. But then she got this big old fancy bag. She got the $400-500 bundles you all made up. But you got your baby in a stroller looking like trash. And then the baby just whining and me in the court later, I'm looking at her, and I'm looking. What a shit that little baby. Boy, back in our time, boy, man, they just look at us. If we was whining, when they look at us, what we do? We shut up. So a lot of you got the wrong idea about who you are because you got the wrong idea about who God is to you. Verse 17. And Jesus knew it. He said unto them, why reason ye because you have no bread? Perceive ye not yet, neither understand? Have ye yet your heart yet hardened? Having eyes you see not, having ears you hear not, and do you not remember? Watch this. He said, when I break the 5 loaves among 5,000, how many basketful of fragments take you up? They said unto him 12. And when the 7 among 4,000, how many baskets of fragments took you up? And they said 7. And he said unto them, how is it that you do not understand? Y'all sitting around people who trying to push you into Christ and you still stuck because you don't even know who you are. Because you fail to see who the people are in front of you. So what is it you don't understand? Why God got to keep proving to you? Why God got to keep asking you? And you sit here day after day, week after week, year after year. We just gonna use mine. Not that I'm saying that in front of anybody, but it's my video. 3, 4 times a day, you sit here in the brother Hubbard and you ain't changed. You ain't changed. Or he say something, you acknowledge it, and you still don't change. Or he say something, God tell you to do it, you still don't do it. What is it that you don't understand? You know what you don't understand? You think this a game and you just wait on your turn to spin the bottle so you can get a kiss. But when you spin a bottle so long, you do know the bottle weaken and it breaks. You need to be in a place that you follow God no matter what, because you don't want to break the connection that you do have that you're not really connecting with, because God ain't got time to keep proving himself to the people he trying to save. See, pretty soon, Noah stopped talking about it's going to rain. And Noah got prepared to get in the ship. And so we had to assume, because they was listening, almost believing, laughing, throwing jokes, throwing a barbecue. Look at Noah. They around there doing, hey, on it. Pretty soon, Noah got in the ark. But God made sure that it started to rain before Noah closed the door. Don't be the one that God got to keep proving itself, and the rain starts, and you can't even get near the door.